If you're like the majority of people, you've most likely never thought much about Australian cuisine and culture. I mean, think about it. With Japan having sushi, India having curry, and Italy having pizza, Australia is often overlooked. But trust me, dismissing our cuisine as just meat pies and sausage rolls is a big mistake. There's a world of flavor waiting to be discovered under the surface. Just imagine the crisp sizzle of a shrimp on the barbie, the juices of a freshly squeezed lemon over grilled seafood, and the sweetness of a mango on a scorching hot summer day. Australian cuisine is so enormous, so vast, that it's nearly impossible to describe with such a simple definition. Sure, we have meat pies, lamingtons, and pavlova, but there's so much more to our cooking than that. Over the past century, Australians have taken inspiration from so many different cultures in our cooking to create our own distinct taste. Australian food has evolved drastically over the years and become a modern multicultural food nation. When the first fleet arrived in 1788, they only brought basic food supplies such as butter, flour, pork, beef, sugar, and rice. They arrived in Sydney only to find the land was unsuitable for growing crops, so they travelled to Parramatta and set up farms. They used flour to bake damper, preserved meat with salt, and drank tea or rum. As for the Aboriginal people, studies show they had extremely nutritious diets as hunter-gatherers. They ate bush foods, such as yams, native carrots, and bush tomatoes, while they also hunted and fished for food that includes fish, kangaroo meat, and emus. Australian cuisine was heavily influenced by British foods until a bit over a century ago, when the Australian gold rush began. People from around the world travelled to Australia to try their luck for gold, bringing with them traditional dishes from their homeland. Chinese settlers began to open up restaurants called cookhouses that served the Chinese community hot meals, but soon began to attract Westerners as well. Chinese cuisine slowly began to weave its way into Australian cuisine. Then came the next big food revolution. After World War II, Australia began to open its gates to immigrants, who brought with them recipes from all around the globe, shaping Australia into the multicultural nation it is today. Not only did the food Australians consume change, but also the way we consume it. Once women began to enter the workforce, cooking meals from scratch for hours was impractical, and the need for convenience stores arose. Frozen meals became more prominent in the average household, and people began eating out more on a regular basis. Though Australian food is quite a broad term and embraces different dishes from various cultures, traditional food that is thought of when referring to Australian food exists. For example, foods such as the Anzac biscuit that originated as a way to feed Australian soldiers, or pavlova and lamingtons, all the way to much loved Aussie barbecues and meat pies. Australia is one of the largest, most successful multicultural nations in the world, so it goes without saying that the cuisine has been made up of a variety of multicultural influences. Almost 30% of Australians are born overseas, bringing with them their food habits and traditional meals. People from many different nationalities have settled in Australia. For example, in the 1840s, many Germans settled in the Barossa Valley in South Australia and established vineyards for making wine, while the Chinese arrived in 1848 to try their luck in the gold rush. Migrants from different countries have brought with them different styles of preparation, cooking, and eating, with Australians integrating these styles into their own food habits. Today, there's an undeniable Asian influence in Australian cuisine that came with the influx of Chinese immigrants brought with the gold rush. Thanks to Asian immigration, Australians can now enjoy yum cha, sushi trains, Thai food, and banh mi, while integrating them into Australian culture and putting our own twist on them, adding to the Australian cuisine. Post-war immigration from Europe had an even larger influence on cooking in Australia, as the country became home to communities filled with Greeks, Italians, Turks, and Lebanese. We soon began cooking with eggplants, zucchinis, capsicums, garlics, pastries, and pasta. Imagine Australia without spag bol. Not only has Australia adopted different nations' dishes and foods, but we've also learned the preparation techniques and cooking methods to fuse our cuisines. Grilling is putting the meat directly over a heat source. The high heat of grilling sears the surface of the meat, creating a delicious crust. To grill your meat, sear your meat quickly on both sides and don't flip too often as it will dry the meat out. It's ideal to flip once and avoid pricking to keep the juices inside. If you want to add flavor, you can marinate in seasoning beforehand. Grilling is a large part of Australian culture. During a barbecue, Aussies will usually choose to grill their meat. Australian cuisine is a fusion of flavors, ingredients, and cultures influenced by many different nations. An example of this is the famous Chico roll, a snack invented by Frank McEnroe in 1951. Though it is Australian, the snack was actually inspired by Chinese spring rolls. Furthermore, lamingtons, sponge cake squares coated in chocolate and shredded coconut, were also inspired by British and American cakes. Australia loves celebrations and festivities, and what better way to celebrate Australian cuisine than with Australia Day? Australia Day is often celebrated with outdoor Aussie barbecues, where friends and family gather together to eat and celebrate. Aussies will also enjoy small delicacies such as meat pies, sausage rolls, and lamingtons. They love to grill their meat on the barbecue, an example of one of their many food habits. Harmony Day is another Australian celebration, although not focused on Australia specifically, but instead a celebration of cultural diversity for those who call Australia home. Communities across Australia celebrate Harmony Day by holding cultural potluck events and food festivals, where people can bring traditional dishes from their backgrounds to share with others. A food habit Australians use on Harmony Day is cultural fusion, where they'll blend dishes from different cultures together. Lamingtons are one of the most recognised food in Australian cuisine. It is debated about whether they actually originated in New Zealand or Australia, but it's commonly believed that they did originate in Queensland. A lamington consists of three main parts: the cake, the icing, and the coconut. The inside of the lamington is a light butter or sponge cake. The sponge cake is coated in a thin layer of chocolate sauce, sweetening the flavour of the lamington, then rolled in desiccated coconut to give a distinct texture. Lamingtons took inspiration from British and American cakes. Though not often thought of as a foodie nation, Australia is most definitely one of the best countries to go for food lovers. As such a diverse country, there will absolutely be food to satisfy your taste buds. From traditional Aboriginal flavours to modern multicultural dishes, Australia is a nation full of must-try food. Aussies value the quality of their meals above all else, so you will not be disappointed. With a variety of preparation techniques and cooking methods to try, numerous cultural celebrations to take part in, and exciting, unique flavours such as Vegemite to taste, leaving Australia will only leave your mouth watering for more.